So this is going to be a follow-up tutorial from the last one, if you've seen it, and it's going to be the buyable option or the shop. I'll make sure to post the script of this episode into a Google Drive so you can download and follow along. So this model is just a showcase model, which will be available at the end of the series. This is our menu so far. There's a model of our car. We can just select any of them. What we want to do is have a buy button and a price of this car. And obviously the currency is somewhere above here. Let's appreciate the beauty of this car first. Okay, if we open up our scene manager, in this case we have named it awake manager. Obviously the first thing we're gonna need is a currency value, which we're not gonna store in here as a value, but we're gonna use it as a player pref basically all the time. And I know there is a XML version to save data, but I prefer using this. So every time we call the awake function, we are gonna get our currency. So to display our currency, obviously we're gonna need a way to display it outside. So let's make a simple text field in here. In our canvas, simply create a new text field and just place it where you want it. Okay, this is our currency text holder or placeholder. So let's just rename it currency. And let's create a slot in here to place it. Public text currency. And we're missing a import. So let's create a new import, unityengine.ui, which does exactly what you want it to do. And next, in the awake function, we want this text to display our currency. So obviously the currency is 0. It's not even set yet. So let's just try it out. Currency dot text is equal to Playerprefs dot get. We're gonna store it as a int currency dot toString, and before currency we want a dollar sign. So simply put these, whatever you call these, I don't remember, a dollar sign plus our Playerprefs. So let's give it a test. This should become 0. Yeah, it works. Okay, now let's put some cash inside it. So in the wake function, before we read from the Playerprefs, let's do Playerprefs dot set int currency. Let's set a value like 150,000. Let's make sure we use the correct strings, and let's test it. And now we have 15,000, not 150. So let's remove this line. And now let's work out our way. Let's delete these first. It's kind of in the way, I don't like it. And now let's work out a way to buy the vehicle. Now to buy a vehicle, first the vehicle has to have some sort of a name and a price. So if we look at the scripts that every vehicle carries, the controller, so basically in here we have to define some values. So I'm gonna comment, let's say for example car shop values. Let's do first a public float or a int price. We're gonna leave it undefined. Then we're gonna do car name, and I don't think we need any more values in here. So let's save that. Let's open up our prefabs and fill in those values. So car price, let's do the Chiron like 9600, and car name, let's do Chiron. Oh wait, car name, I left it as a float. My bad. Car name Chiron. Once you've named all your vehicles, and by the way, if you think that every vehicle carries a name already, that's not gonna work. And I'll show you why. If you hit play, we have just spawned a vehicle. This vehicle is this Chiron. Okay, this Chiron carries the name Chiron. But in our turntable, is called Chiron Clone. So every car or every vehicle that we spawned carries the name Performante Clone. We don't want that. We want a set name. So that's why we done this. Okay, so now we want to display the price that each vehicle carries. So you might have guessed it. We're just gonna simply duplicate this currency, Control D, rename it, and replace it. After you place it where you want it, you may have guessed it again, we need a new slot for that. Before we go and create a new slot, we need a car name to display the name of our vehicle. So let's do that, like maybe this has a 200 price. Let's do before that, let's do, or actually we don't even need a slot for our car name. We can just do our car name and price in one line. So let's call this car info. And in our manager we already have a slot for it. So let's rename it car, actually not this one. Duplicate the currency, name it car info. And in the car info, we want to retrieve the data or the information that we store in car name and car price. So that's very, 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 very simple. We don't want to do that in a wake. We want to do that after we instantiate it. So after these two lines, we want car info to display the name, the information that the current displayed car carries. So car info dot text is equal to a list of vehicles dot vehicles into the index of Playerprefs dot getInt pointer, so into the current pointer dot. So right now we are referring to the game object, but what we need to access is this script, this controller script. So we need to get that. Get component controller dot car name dot toString. So right now this line should get the car name that is stored into the controller script that is being carried by this object. This whole highlighted code refers to one object, and this simply, obviously, just replaces the text. So let's try that code. Let's hit play. It doesn't work. Okay, so it gives us an error that I forgot to connect the car info. Okay, yeah, it gets the name. And if we switch, it doesn't get it. Okay, perfect. This works perfect. We don't get an error, and it shows the name of the vehicle. Okay, it doesn't show every vehicle's name, but if we start and stop again, it should show cart. Yes. So now let's make this line of code display the car name, which is actually doing right now, and the car price. And instead of making our code very, very messy, let's create a method. Public void get car info. Let's put it right there. Let's duplicate it. Actually, we don't need to duplicate it. We only need to duplicate this line of code. Let's do a plus in here, since we're working with a string. And instead of car name, we can have car price dot toString. Now we can use this after we instantiate. So let's do that in here, and we instantiate in here as well. So let's do in here and in the left button as well. So let's do in here. After you place this block of code below instantiating, hit Control Save, and let's test it. Hit play. It displays cart and the price without spacing. we want this to display the price if we don't own the car. And if we own the car, this to say only this car is owned or just owned. So the way I made the buying system work, or the shop system work, is that before displaying this OK sign or this start game sign, we do a simple check that it reads these values, and then it goes inside the Playerprefs and checks if the car we're trying to buy is owned or not. If it is owned, we display this sign. If it's not owned, we display a buy sign. And that buy sign simply puts the car name into the Playerprefs. So let's do that right now, because explaining it is a little bit tricky. Let's start with putting a dollar sign in here. So to represent a buy sign, I'm just using this this lock, which is unlocked. Okay, let's create a placeholder. Actually, we don't need a placeholder. We just need a new method that gets triggered by this this buy button. So let's say buy. Okay, explaining time. So the way the buying system is gonna work is that first we're gonna need a placeholder for that buy button, so we can enable and disable it whenever we want. We're gonna refer to it as a game object, since we can enable and disable it whenever we want. We're gonna refer it as a game object. So let's duplicate that, call it buy button, and before displaying carinfo.text, we're gonna do a check. We're gonna check if this car name first exists into the Playerprefs. If it does exist, then we're gonna display this car info. If it doesn't exist, then we're gonna display this button, this buy button. So this if statement is checking if the car name does exist into the Playerprefs. That means we own the car. So if we own the car, we want the text to display owned. That's all we want to display. So if we don't own the vehicle, we display the car statistics. So the way we're gonna actually buy is by getting this name and storing it into the Playerprefs. So this is how we're gonna do that. First of all, this buy button has to be enabled. If the buy button is enabled, we want to disable the button that says start. So we're gonna do a slot for the start button. After you create a slot for the start button, into this checking in here, into this car info, we want to do the checks. So if we own the vehicle, the start button dot set active is going to be true, and the buy button is going to be false. If we don't own the car, vice versa, copy, paste, copy and paste that. And also, if we own the car, we want to return. If we don't, we jump in here. If we don't own the car, the start button should be false, the buy button should be true. If we hit the buy button into the Playerprefs, we want to load in the string. The way we're gonna load in the string is by saying Playerprefs dot set int, or set string. The string name is going to be this, and the value is going to be that. And also we want to decrease our currency, since we're buying it and we're giving our money away. The way we're going to do that is by saying Playerprefs dot set int. So we want to set our currency. So we want the currency string to be set the value that we first have. So we're gonna get it, get string. So we want to get the currency that we currently have, and we want to decrease that by the price that the car has. So we're simply gonna get it from here and paste it in here. Obviously make sure you don't have a to string in here. so delete that. So we're working with integer values. So this minus the price of the car. So our total amount of currency minus the price of the car. So we're gonna copy the price of the car and paste it in here, obviously removing toString, and now this should work just fine. But now you might have guessed that even if we don't have the money, we can buy the car. So obviously we're gonna do a little bit of debugging. We're gonna check if our currency is bigger or equal to the car we want to buy. If it is, simply buy the car. Else, we want the car info to display. So if we have enough money to buy this car, buy it. If we don't, do nothing. So let's first check if this algorithm works. So hit save. Don't forget to drag your buttons. So here is our buy button and here is our start button. Connect your buy button, and the start button should already be connected, and hit start. So right now the start button is not available. That means our algorithm works. Let's try going into the other car, and still the start button is not on. Let's try buying this car. We can't, because we forgot to actually use this car info. So after we press the buy button, we want to refresh this car info. Very simple fix. Just execute the car info method. Hit save. Beautiful. It shows that we own this car because we bought it. These other cars are not. So let's try to buy this car, which costs 230. Let's buy it, and now we own the car. So we own this car and this car. So notice the currency did not change, but if we play again, it did change. So the reason that did not change is because we are not updating the currency text. So copy that from here, and since we're having this block of code execute, we can delete this line from here completely and paste it in here. Okay, so update it if this argument is true, and even if it's not, update it. Hit save, and let's try again. Let's hit play, and now we have this owned and this owned. We still have this to own and this other one. So we have 3,450 bucks, but this car costs more than that. So let's try to buy it. We can't. It won't allow us. Let's give us more cash. So into the wake, let's set our currency into the Playerprefs, and now we have this amount of cash. So for whatever reason, this car is owned. We're gonna have to debug that. So the reason why that car has been bought is because we are asking if we have enough money to buy it after we are actually buying it. So simply copy replace this code after we check for money. So now the algorithm should work perfectly fine. Okay, we own this car, but we don't own this car. So this car costs 450,000 and we have more than that. So let's give us less money. Let's say in here we have 150. Hit play. And now let's try to buy it. Okay, nothing happens. We still don't own this car. So let's try to replay it. And yeah, we don't own this car. Let's give us 450,000. Let's hit play. And now we have the exact money to buy this car. Let's first delete this line of code. And now let's try to buy it. Okay, buy it. So we own the car and we have 0 currency. So right now we own all the cars. And now we can play whichever car we want. So let's play this Chiron. We start with it. And we can play the game.